It is said that reading is a way to escape your own life. It can take you to faraway places. It can put you into other people's shoes, can make you more empathetic, make you sleep better, relieve your stress, and so on and so on. Today, though, we're going to be talking to W.L. Hawkin about a romantic adventure near her home in Vancouver, Canada. Her latest book is about the Lure River at romances. So don't go away. We'll be back. If you just join us, then welcome to the Writer's Corner live show. I'm your host, Brigitte Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa. Our live stream is made possible by Creative Edge, StreamYard, and Be Live Media. So a special warm welcome to you, our audience, whether you are watching us over on Amazon Live. Just know that the comments are being monitored in real time. I've got my iPhone here and I'm monitoring the comments on Amazon Live. If, however, you are watching us over on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, Twitter, do know that those comments are also being monitored in real time. And if it's the first time that you watch the show, we've been going live for over 3.5 years. But if it's your first time, we would love to give you a shout out to welcome you. And my first shout out, the very first shout out goes over to Vasanth Kumar. I am not even going to try and pronounce your surname because I'm going to get it wrong, but a very, very warm welcome to you, Vasanth, over on Facebook. So everyone watching us live, a great hello out to you. Now, one of the things that we're very passionate about on the Writer's Corner live show, because we do know that a lot of our authors are still doing online book launches and online presentations about their books. And so we like to show you how you can level up on your own online appearance. So one of the things that both I and my co-host use is the Logitech Brio camera, which we both love. And the Logitech Brio camera is highly recommended, or we highly recommend it, because it's got trademarked Right Light HDR technology, and all that gobbledygook really means that it will adjust your light automatically so you don't have to invest in too much lighting to look good, which is an absolute bonus. And then for audio, what I recommend and what I use is the Samsung condenser microphone. Samsung, incidentally, was the world's first produced the world's first USB condenser microphone. It's got a very, very solid die-cast construction, which reduces noise vibrations and makes it ideal for people who are doing live streaming or live events. But not everybody wants to have a huge, big microphone, or not everyone needs one. What you can also do is use something like the Rode Lavalier microphone. It's a high quality lapel microphone, and that works great. The windshield cuts out word whiskers, so that's also a great bonus. Now, I know that a lot of our authors and may just simply use their phones to go live, and that's also great because the cameras on the phones are absolutely incredible. But you don't want to make people feel seasick, and I also want to give a shout out to Tish over on Amazon Live. Welcome, Tish. Great to see you. So the other thing that I recommend, if you are doing a book launch or talking about your book using your phone, you don't want to hold your phone in your hand, because it makes people feel seasick if your hand's shaking. You don't want to use some kind of a stabilizer. And what I recommend is something like the DJ Osmo. It's a 3-axis smartphone gimbal, or otherwise you can use something like an ographer on top of your tripod to stabilize it, and do put your phone into landscape mode, because I don't know if you guys noticed, sometimes you see those black lines. Those black lines mean that your phone is not in landscape; it's in portrait. So if you want to get a better picture, do put your phone into portrait mode. And then for people who really want to be fancy, um, they could use something like the Stream Deck to change scenes. That's another one of the things that I recommend, which is the Stream Deck. But on to more amazing things, which is the whole point of our show today. Our guest today is W.L. Hawkin. But before I introduce our amazing guest for today, my amazing co-host is Mary Elizabeth Jackson. She's a mom. She is an author. She's a ghostwriter, and she lives in the USA. Now, one of her latest books that you really do want to go and have a look at, she has co-written with Thornton Klein, and it's called Cheers from Heaven. Do check that book out over on Amazon Live. So let me welcome my amazing co-host.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm good, and you?
I'm good. It's nice to see you, and we're excited about our author today. And February is the month of love, even though we can love all the time, right? So romance is in the air, and we have red in our background, and so it's a perfect time to talk about love, isn't it?
So yes, so W.L. Hawkin writes romantic adventures from a home in Canada, as we said earlier, and going to be talking about her latest book, The Lure River Romances. It's set in a small town romantic suspense series in the American Midwest, in the fictional town of Lure River. I wonder how she came up with that name. We'll have to ask her.
I'll have to ask her what the back, what got her to say that or to put that. Yeah, I know. I love the cover too. The cover is just beautiful.
It's a stunning cover. I want to ask her about that. And she mentioned something very interesting. She said that she graduated from the Trent University with a BA in Indigenous Studies, but at this time, she discovered that her great great grandmother was an Indigenous woman. Very
Interesting.
interesting. We'll have to ask her
Hmm.
about that. Anyway,
Yes,
so shall we invite our amazing guest to come and join us on screen?
let's do. Hi, Wendy.
Wendy,
How are
welcome.
you?
I'm great. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you're unmuted. Yes,
Okay,
we can hear
awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that lovely welcome there.
Yeah, do you feel
That's
loved and
beautiful.
special?
I do. That
Good.
was just lovely.
We want you to feel loved. So, yeah, we want to dive right in. So,
Okay.
Brigetti, what do you want to know? I know I want to know a bunch also.
Wendy, how did you get started as an author? I'm always keen to know, because sometimes it's a teacher, it's a mom, it's someone in your life, or you just love reading. So what was it
Or
that
you just fell
inspired you
into
to
it?
become an author?
Yeah.
Gosh, that's a really complicated question. I did have I've had two fantastic English teachers in my life, one in grade 8 and one in grade 9. And I quit school in grade 11 with a grade 10 education. So I was really bad at bad at science and math, but I excelled in English. So I was writing way back when, and they were very helpful in being supportive of me and saying, you're a great writer and all those things. And so I was writing poetry in my teenage years, and then I wrote songs. And then after that, I wrote my first novel. Actually, wait a minute, this is it. I just realized that. So the first novel I completed was in 1990, while I was divorcing my ex-husband and while I was starting my degree in Indigenous Studies. And this is it. So I actually wrote this 30 years ago as a draft, and I wrapped it all. I was dreaming it, and I was writing it on my old Commodore 64, and I wanted to know if I could finish it. And I did. I finished the whole thing, and then I wrapped it all up in brown paper and tucked it away, and I just carried it around. So a couple of years ago, I found it, and I thought, oh, maybe I should read this and see where I was at back then. And I read it like, wow, it's a romance. That's interesting. And yeah, I know. And I rewrote it. So it's different. A lot of it has the same bones, but a lot of it's different. And of course, my writing has changed. But this was my first.
Okay, so
Wow.
so is that what turned into lore, or is
Yes.
that a different? Oh, it is.
No, that is what turned into lore.
How interesting is that? I mean,
Yeah.
we have a friend, an author friend of ours, David McDaniel Burgetti, and I love this story because I think it took him 30 years to write his actual first novel. And he had about 200,000 words, I think, in it. So the publisher made him cut it into two. So I think now he's on his third, and so, but it took him, he had been working all this time, but you tucked it away and then brought it back. And how amazing is that to go back and see where you were at then? And did you have the experience of looking at it and going, that wasn't half bad? Or, like you said, the bones were still there, but how much has your quality, I guess your writing's going to be totally different now, but I think we can still, even 30 years later, have it like the same kind of theme or the same kind of sound or tone to how we're telling the story. So is it still the same for you, or you totally completely changed it?
Well, you know what? I started actually opening it up and writing kind of word for word off of the manuscript that I had, and I kept the characters pretty much intact, and I got partway through it, and then what happened is the main character found the bones of an Indigenous woman in her shed, and when that happened, because I'm an intuitive writer, I just immediately said, well, who is this? And what is your story? How did you end up here? And I started talking to the Indigenous woman. And then it ended up being a girl. She's 15. And she came through and basically told me her story. So I took that story and I interwove it throughout the story of Jesse and Hawk. And that has become, it's a really powerful piece to it. So this has a romantic suspense. Yes, there's a romance, but there's also some really important issues in here, and that flow out of it. Yeah.
And the characters, are they entirely fictional, or is it based somewhat on some true stories?
They're fictional characters. I would say, though, I find now reading it that they are more like me than anybody else I've ever written. And I think maybe because it was my first book, and because I was going through, a lot of traumatic stuff at the time, it shows in here. So one thing about me is I've always wanted to live in a cabin in the bush. It's one of my romantic dreams. I know it's not always entirely a romantic thing when you do it in real life, which Jesse finds out. But it's something I always wanted to do. And I also rode around a lot when I was a kid. I had a horse and I was a loner, and I rode around in the bush on my horse a lot. And she spends quite a bit of time in this book doing that. So that's stuff I really have a feel for. And then even with Hawk believes he was born in the wrong century to the wrong people. And I always felt that too, that I didn't belong where I was. And I had been I'd ended up in this place, and I've been trying to figure out who I am for all these years. Actually, I'm still trying to figure out who I am. And so that comes through with him.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, you know, I've had that experience with someone before where they felt so out of place. And I think that's normal to some degree for so many people, so many kids and people to go through, especially I think kids in their middle teens tend to experience that kind of identity, crisis of, feeling like they were in the wrong place, the wrong time. As storytellers, what I'm getting from, I feel like that you probably do this as well. When we hear something about our family and history, we want to know about the story and what drove that person and what did they do and what were they thinking and what were they feeling. And we instantly, I guess, as storytellers, start to see this story in our head and we want to write about it. So it sounds like that is exactly what you did and exactly what you feel. And it made for an incredible story. So isn't it interesting? So much from our past, and a person who lived that life might have thought they lived a very insignificant life in this world. But to us, it was so significant and powerful.
That's really interesting that you say that, because I have this story that's about that. And then the piece I am just starting to work on now is a creative nonfiction piece that I'm working on about my ancestors, because I've really got into that. And if my great-great-grandmother knew how significant she was in my life, I think she would be really stunned by it. But she's the huge key factor in my life and my development. So I want to write her story. So that's what my next creative piece is going to be.
That sounds really, really, really exciting. Wendy, can I ask you to read a section out of your book? I mean, it just sounds so thrilling.
I know. I'm so excited about it.
Okay. Here is the cover you were talking about.
That cover is gorgeous. Who designed that cover for you?
I did.
Oh, you did a good job. You did a great job. And it really pops. Yeah, the color pops. It really, that's one that will catch your eye on a bookshelf, and that's what you go for.
I hope so. All right, I'm actually just going to read from the beginning, and I know sometimes you shouldn't do that because the beginnings are so crucial, but I think it's a good way into the characters a little bit. So this is called Deer Slayer. Jessie held her breath, her muscles as tense as the trees hiding her. Through the telephoto lens on her old Nikon F2, the buck appeared close enough to touch. Angled perfectly, he browsed a patch of wild strawberries at the edge of the thicket. The sunlight broke through the pines and stretched across the glade, framing the deer in a golden glow. Jessie was downwind, the light was ideal, the moment was perfect. The buck glanced up, uneasy, perhaps perceiving her presence with some intuitive force known only to animals surviving in the wild. Stay with me, I won't hurt you. I only want to show the world how beautiful you are. The faintest crackling twig, bird wave, scratch or yawn would send the buck dashing, white tail erect. She knew he'd bolt at the first click of the shutter and was glad of it. His wariness would keep him alive, but the first shot had to be the best. He dropped his head to browse and she sipped in a breath. Then he raised it again, turned his thick neck, and stared in her direction. The white rectangular patch on his neck matched that of his inner ears and the edge of his black button nose. Jessie focused on the eyes. Black and intense, they bored straight through her soul. Pressing her finger to the shutter, she heard the motor drive fire. 1, 2, 3. Then a soft whoosh, a muted thwack. Glazing hard, the black eyes slid from view as she stared through the lens, heart racing, mind spinning. The buck crashed to his knees, shaking the earth as he hit the ground. Letting go of the shutter release, Jessie sprang from the bushes, but her right foot caught one leg of the tripod and sent her sprawling into a patch of stinging nettles. Cursing, she picked herself up and ran to the deer, wringing her throbbing hands. Smeared berries marred the buck's moist black nose. The dead eyes stared. She knelt and touched the tip of the thick, bulbous antlers. They'd not yet hardened into points. He was young and healthy. Tears burned in her eyes. Working as a nature journalist, she encountered wounded and dead animals at times, but each one broke her heart. You poor thing, what happened? When she noticed blood beneath the buck's left foreleg, she used both hands to shift the body. A broken arrow jutted from a gash. Head up, she took a quick breath. Hunters, where? How's that?
Oh, nice. Well, I could totally see the whole scene, and I could feel being there,
Yeah.
being her, run, going toward that. And so that is the job of the writer, isn't it? To bring
Yes.
people in so they can actually feel it, see it, taste it, smell it. And, if you can't do that, you don't have the guts of a story, do you?
No.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, as I was saying, like, I'm an intuitive writer. And so this is actually the first book that I dreamed quite a bit of it. And that scene is from a dream I had 30 years ago. And I actually saw it, like, when I was waking in the morning. When you wake up in the morning, you're kind of in that half state of unconsciousness, which is a really creative space. You're in theta brain. And I would see the whole thing. And of course, who's on the other end of that arrow is our hero. And then I would get up and write it all down on my Commodore 64. So that's an original scene from way back.
Wow. And look at how creative and descriptive you were 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is your destiny, right?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. I mean, I've written a lot of books in between, but it's kind of fun being that this was the first.
Amazing. That was great. That's beautiful. So go ahead.
I also want to ask you, a lot of people, or not all authors, decide to have a publicist. Do you have one, and why?
I do have a publicist, and I guess that started because I'd written all these books, and I had published my whole Holly Stone mystery series pretty much, and but I didn't do much other than some local readings. And I knew that that's the piece that I was missing, because I'm such an introvert. I'm not the person who can phone up and say, hey, can I be on your show? But if somebody says to me, hey, you're going to be on this show, I'll be like, okay. and I can show up and I can do it. And, I was a teacher long enough that I can get up and talk in front of people, and that's not a problem. But making those initial phone calls, I'm just really not good at that. So I actually found Mickey Mickelson at Creative Edge through another friend of mine who's on another group called the Creative Academy. And she was getting all this press on Facebook and everything. And I emailed her and I said, okay, what are you doing? How are you getting all these shows? She's like, it's okay. Somebody put me on there. And I said, well, like who? How are you doing this? She was in this Uncaged article with her pet, and I really wanted to do that because I love my dog so much. So she said, well, this is the person. So I ended up talking to him, and he signed me about a year ago, just as my last book in my series was coming out. So yeah.
And it's really important. It's really important to have that support.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a vital, we as authors, we have to think about where we're spending our money and what's important. And I was talking to somebody about this recently. When you're getting married, you want to spend your money on good pictures, good video, so you have those memories. And I just think having a publicist, and we have the same publicist, and Mickey just is an amazing person. But I think it's one of those accessories, if you want to call it an accessory, that you have to have. Let's just say, he's like lipstick for women, right? There you go. I just hashtag, right?
Love that. You'll love that line.
The way that I like to explain that is, if you were to walk into that, it gives you a sense of authority. If you were to walk into a courtroom without a lawyer, would anybody really take you seriously? But if you walked in and you say, talk to my lawyer, talk to my publicist. Or if you were to walk into a library and say, this is going to be my, I've just released a new book, but talk to my publicist. Doesn't it give you a sense of authority?
For sure. For
Um,
sure.
Well, and he that's what he has us do though. We are supposed to, if somebody says they want to book us on something, we have to direct them toward him. So, that's the thing to do. And yes, Bridgetti, you're completely right. I actually unfortunately had an experience like that in April, going into court without a lawyer over something. And it's interesting how you're not treated the same way. Even if you could handle it, you just aren't treated the same way. So it's a different experience.
So absolutely, getting a publicist is definitely something that you want to do. Just sort of like a final question from me. Do you have any sort of hidden gems in the book that someone may recognize?
I'm not sure. There is in this book. Okay, Hawk. So we have Jessie as the wildlife photographer, and she's a vegan, and we have Hawk as the hunter who's gone back to nature, and he's living in a cave. He's been there for 3 years, and they're both very distraught and working on healing after losing someone, and so I think that the interesting thing here is there's a lot of Indigenous spirituality throughout the book, and I would say that's a bit of a hidden gem. And as I said at the time, I was starting my studies at Trent University in the Indigenous Studies, and Trent University is, I think, a different university than any. At least the Indigenous Studies department is different than any that I've ever seen, because it's taught by all Indigenous people who are traditional people for the most part. And there are elders that come in and speak, when they're going to, this is how my experience was 30 years ago. Anyway, when we were going to do a ceremony in the theater, they would come through and they would smudge the whole place with sage before we started. And I did so much healing work there for myself, because when you think about it, I was a wild child, and then quitting school just around when I was like 16 and moving to Toronto, I had a lot of healing work I needed to do, because when you're in that situation, you get yourself into situations that require healing work. And so I did that there, and I did that by listening to elders and really getting enmeshed in that culture and doing a lot of journaling. And because there is this sense of body, mind, spirit, emotion, and the whole person. So when you're doing the healing, it's not just going and talking to someone like in a counseling office. It's a whole other piece that kind of puts you back together as a whole person. And I'm really, really grateful for that time I had there. So that is a little bit of what Hawk is doing out in his cave. And there's a piece where he does a sweat lodge in there. He uses tobacco to honor the animals. He's really trying to live and walk his talk. And I think that's an important piece of it. And the other gem I would just like to mention is about the missing Indigenous woman, because murdered and missing Indigenous women is a huge piece here in Canada and the United States, for sure. And it's something I'm really passionate about. And, it's just not a good thing. It's something that we need to be able to change our attitudes. I think it's got the way that it has because people have got away with grabbing Indigenous women over many, many years, and nothing happened to them. And so they think they can, but they can't. And I think that we really need to do that. So Ruby Little Bear is the girl's name in this book, and she kind of shines a light on that. So I really wanted to mention that because it's a big piece for me that's in there that wasn't in the original book.
And that's something that did you dream about that, or how did that come to you again about the Indigenous woman?
That just came up. Like Jessie was what happens is Jessie finds out that even though she's had a bit of a flare up with Hawk over the deer, when she finds out that a friend of his that he grew up with, it's a mentor to him, is dying, she takes it on herself to go into the woods and find him and tell him, because she didn't get a chance to say goodbye to the man that she loved, her fiance. And so she gets on her horse and wanders into the woods. But just before she does that, she leaves the shed doors open during a rainstorm, and something gets in there and starts digging around in the shed. And when she comes back from her ride with the horse in the morning, she finds this hand, these bones sticking through the dirt, and that's how she finds Ruby. And so, of course, she goes and tells the tribal police, and they start this search. So while they're working on discovering who the body is, she's off finding Hawk and having her own adventure, and then everything comes together in the end. So it's really interesting how that happened. I didn't plan it. I don't plan anything. And so I basically said to Ruby when she appeared, I said, tell me your story. And I also hear things a lot. So I basically wrote down the whole story in one chunk of what happened to her.
Wow.
And then,
That's amazing.
And then I split it into small pieces and wove it through the story. So it's part of the story. And then we hear Ruby's whole story in the end of what happened with her. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Very nice.
Wendy, thank you so much. This was amazing. The time went by so quickly. So thank you for joining us, and we'd love to have you back another time. We loved hearing about Lure. And so, if you guys are watching us over on Amazon, the book is in the carousel. So please go and grab a copy of the book, Lure.
Mm-hmm.
Wendy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really nice to speak with you.
Thank you.
Big pleasure. Take care, everyone. We'll see you back next week, same time, same place, on another episode of the Writer's Corner live show. Take care, everyone.